warned about a pandemic like this years before it happened, and your warnings are forever etched in my brain. Now that we are here, what do you see happening next? How bad does it get, and how long are we in this for?
Well, fortunately, the innovation in diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines will get us largely out of this by the end of 2021. The therapeutics will start to cut the death rate, but the true end comes when, between natural infection and the vaccine, we have this herd immunity. And for rich countries, sometime next year, ideally in the first half.
So we're going to be okay? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're certainly going to be okay. We're lucky this one wasn't a more fatal disease. I do think this time we'll pay attention and, have the same type of practice and preparation. Some countries, did very, very well. The U.S. did not.
So your foundation has given more than $350 million now to fight COVID. You are backing a South Korean vaccine in particular. Why that vaccine? And are there any other vaccines out there that look promising to you?
We're behind a lot of different vaccines. We're funding manufacturing capacity in many different sites, particularly for AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, and Novavax. We may do that for some of the other vaccines, but those are the ones that are the most scalable, low cost, because we're trying to make sure we can end it not just in the rich countries, but also in the developing countries, and that benefits everyone if we achieve that. We're even asking the U.S. to contribute like they've done with other global health crises, which so far they haven't gotten around to that.
So how confident are you that we will have a working vaccine that can be distributed in mass quantities by the end of 2020?
Well, the initial vaccine, in terms of its effectiveness against sickness and transmission, won't be ideal. The phase 3 primary endpoint is for 50% effectiveness, and it may not have the long duration that one of the later constructs will. So some of those, particularly the more expensive ones, will mainly be used in the rich countries as a bit of a stopgap. We'd be lucky to have much before the end of the year, but then enough will complete that during the first half of next year, a number are very likely to get approved, and then we need to scale up. We need billions of doses. The places that have a hard time doing the sheltering and are already so poor that the economics effects are quite dramatic. So it's the biggest challenge the global health community's ever faced. I think we'll rise to it, even though, the right investments were not made, and in the case of the U.S. at least, the lack of organization around testing and trials has been very disappointing.
Now, for so many years, the so-called anti-vaxxers, people have said, well, if they lived through a pandemic like their grandparents did, they would think differently. Well, here we are, and the feelings haven't changed. How concerned are you about vaccine misinformation, and that so many people out there might just not get it, even if it is available?
Hopefully we'll have, people of both parties who are trusted speaking out in a credible way, people who've been known to, admit mistakes and develop credibility over time with the various constituencies. But, you do have to worry because we do need a lot of people to take the vaccine to get that full herd immunity.
Should it be voluntary or should it be mandatory?
Well, making something mandatory can often backfire even when you're doing a favor to the community. So I doubt, they'll choose. You might say if you're going to work in an old folks' home or, have any exposure to elderly people, there might be some circumstances where it would be required.
What about schools? Should it be mandatory for kids going back to school?
Early on, I doubt that'll be a primary thing. I think, the teachers who are elderly or who live in multi-generational households where they necessarily have exposure to older people, they would be a good target. That's more leveraged than doing the full student body in the times when the vaccine is going to be scarce. As it gets more available, yes, you'd like to go for young people, particularly if one of the constructs is very good at transmission blocking.
Now, you already have countries like the United States that are moving to lock down vaccine supplies, buying up huge supplies of potential vaccines, buying up the gear needed to administer them. How harmful is that?
We're asking this vaccine, even if one company invents it, we're saying that they ought to let other companies do the manufacture. And I think it's really exemplary that a number of companies have committed to make this a non-profit activity, just break even, and for the poorest countries just get their marginal cost. So we're part of funding those extra factories being built at risk, and so they'll be standing by for that approval. The U.S. as yet has not helped come up with procurement money for the poor countries to get access. It's possible that'll get into the supplemental bill. I'm encouraging Republicans and Democrats to include a total of $8 billion, half for therapeutics, half for vaccine, in whatever relief bill gets passed. So the U.S. doesn't look selfish. We deserve credit. We've funded more R&D than any country, but on factories and procurement, we've only taken care of ourselves. If we just add this, which is less than 1% of the bill, then it's a typical U.S. picture where we show up strategically, humanitarianly, and to help ourselves to avoid the disease coming back in a super effective way.
There are some raging internet conspiracy theories out there about you wanting to implant chips in people via a vaccine, and you are the center of some frankly ludicrous narratives. Does that upset you personally? How do you feel about all that?
Well, it's kind of strange because they take the fact that I'm involved with vaccines. That part's true. It involves saving millions of lives for lots and lots of different diseases, including, HIV and malaria. They just reverse it, that instead of giving money to save lives, I'm, making money to get rid of lives. So just by inverting it and ascribing ill intent, it takes this complex situation that was unexpected and may make it feel like it's more understandable. If that stops people from taking the vaccine or looking at the latest data about how they should behave, including wearing a mask, then that's a big problem. I wouldn't have expected this. It's just a bit strange that it's been politicized and the conspiracy people have had a heyday.